Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we're super happy to have you here. And if you've been listening and enjoying for a while, I would be super grateful if you would please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best and simplest ways to pay it forward and help others find the show so that they too can tap into the powerful perspectives and positive vibrations we are collectively emanating. The other unique and magical way to share this show is by sending any friends you think would benefit from listening to this podcast our Game with the Universe link at positivehead.com/game. Also listed in the show notes, which will serve them up a quote-unquote random episode when they click it. Just instruct them before clicking the link to close their eyes for a moment and sincerely ask the universe to cue up the episode that contains the insight and perspectives that they most need to hear at this point in their life journey, and then click to listen to whatever episode is synchronistically served up to them. I have heard time and time again from people about the incredible results they received playing the game. So just tell your friends magical results are guaranteed or their karma back. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Emma Dunwoody here with me on the show. Emma is a human design coach who developed her own unique method called Transformational Human Design, as well as hosts the Human Design podcast. Super excited to have you here. Hello, Emma. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, it's nice to be here with you. I'm excited to see where this chat goes.
Likewise. This is a topic that, we're almost 2,000 episodes into this show, and only one have we had a guest where we talked about human design before, and that's going back a few years back. Actually, episode 1400. I'll just throw that out there now for people who love what you have to say and they're like, I want to learn more. Of course, they'll find your podcast and they can find one other Positive Head podcast with this topic. But I'd like to just go ahead and kick this off with my cliche opening question. And it is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, what's your passion? You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Oh, I love this. Well, oh my God. So I'm a manifesting generator, which means I talk a lot. So I have to minimize that. I would say I work every day to shift the power from the few to the many. I help people love, trust, and accept themselves so that we can create a better world. That's
Cool.
what I do.
I love that. Very, very inspiring. And I'd love to hear how you ended up on this unique path that you're on. I always sort of top of the show, these Soul Share episodes, like to hear whatever is relevant as far as your backstory that you'd care to share.
Yeah. Well, it's really weird to think that my story, significantly begins 20 years ago. It's kind of weird because I'm coming up to my 20-year anniversary. And that was sitting in a doctor's office, a leading specialist with depression and anxiety, and being given a diagnosis that this depression and panic disorder. So panic disorder is I lived in a panic attack 24/7.
Wow.
And it would just be different, amplifications of that panic attack. And he looked at me across the table as so laid back and relaxed. And he said, you've come to the right place. We can help you. You will never heal yourself from this, but you'll learn to manage it. And I remember in that moment just going, no. I just knew on some deep level, if you could just tell me how I got myself here, then I can get myself out of here. I just had this intuitive knowing. But walking away from that appointment, I still to this day can see it clearly as anything. Walking across the car park thinking, well, either this is it because I cannot live a life like this. For me personally, the pain of what I experienced on the day-to-day, I couldn't even imagine, dialing that down. It had to be gone for me. Everybody's journey is different. So I certainly not judging anyone else's journey or experience.
Mhm.
And the other option was like, I would find a way to heal myself. And as the universe goes, I made a declaration and a commitment. And in that moment, I made this commitment to myself and to finding the answers that I was looking for. And at that time, it was like, how did I get myself here? Why am I here? And that really led me on, first of all, really trying to understand the science of happiness.
Mm.
I picked up a fantastic book called Hardwiring Happiness.
Mm.
And it was this sudden realization that I had some control over my thinking, my brain, my behavior. So that led me on this huge journey of understanding happiness, behavior, quantum physics, neuroscience, a lot of biohacking as well, because obviously what we put into our body has a large effect on our mental health.
Yeah.
Um, so I just went on this epic journey. And at the time, I was working in the advertising industry. I wasn't long married. Life was really hectic and unhealthy for so many reasons. And over probably the next 15 years, I ended up transitioning out of advertising. I noticed that I had this gift of whenever I was faced with a crisis, I had this ability to navigate through it.
Mm.
That led me to become a master coach. I signed up for a program here in Australia. I spent 3 years studying everything there is to know about human behavior.
Wow.
And at that time, I was very science based. So it was all about results, results, results. Like, what can I see? What can I feel? What can I touch? And of course, as we all do on this journey, as I started to learn about quantum physics and the brain, I got more curious about spirituality. So then I started to understand metaphysics. I started to go into the more spiritual world, and I could see how science and spirituality were saying the exact same things.
Right.
So this kind of opened me up so much to all of these other possibilities, because the quantum physics piece for me was the bridge that really, it was so evidentially true in my life. I could see that it was so true.
Right.
um, and then as I sort of navigated that journey, I had a successful corporate business that was part-time, because I was looking after two young kids. My husband was traveling half the year for his big corporate job. I'd healed my mental health. We'd healed our relationship. We had these two amazing children. I'd retrained. I had this business that was organically just succeeding. And then I just had this moment in 2018 that I was like, I should feel better in here.
Mm.
Why do I still feel like there's a big hole, like there's something missing? At that point, I decided to walk the Camino de Santiago. So this is back in 2018, and I'm literally just about to leave to go and walk it again.
Wow.
And
How
my
long of
big
a walk is
intention,
that? Can I ask?
it's 800 kilometers. So it's 500 miles, my American friend tells me.
Wow. How long does
Yes.
it take?
It's 32 days of walking, an
Wow.
average of 24 kilometers a day.
Wow.
Um, and then, throw in there maybe 2, maybe 3 rest days. So, and you're carrying everything that you need on your back. So
Wow.
yeah, it's so cool. It really is. And I've just been having a conversation with, you probably know Jeff and Clayton from the FLFE. I was just,
Mm.
they're
Mm.
amazing. You should so chat to these humans.
Mm.
So we were just talking about consciousness, and um, they've created something to help us raise our consciousness, but literally in our homes. We can put it on our phone. It helps mitigate EMF. And these two humans, like if I could sit and talk to them all day, anyway, I would. The point being, they were saying about the Camino that really, because they calibrate everything. So
I think
calibrating all
maybe
the
I
different
have heard of
energy.
this. Do they
Yeah.
focus on a certain like location or place or building
Yep.
and
Yep.
send like energy to
Yep.
it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have heard
Yep.
of this.
Yep. And it's actually something that, just going back to my story as well, like I walked the Camino in 2018, and then I put the FLFE on my home, and I work from home 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and everything changed.
Wow.
As part of that Camino, I had this like, okay, well, what is my purpose? I need to know this gap, this hole that I'm feeling. I need to know what that needs filling. How do I feel that? How do I feel really on purpose? How do I have this impact that I know I'm meant to have? And By the end of the Camino, I felt like I had a lot of answers to a lot of questions, but I was like, universe, can you please just be so obvious? Like, there's just a piece that's missing. And as I arrived home, I was bombarded. Friends, family members, my community, my clients, they all asked me about this thing, human design. And I'd already put it down 3 times because I didn't like the language. I was a behavioralist. I'm like, yeah, you're creating that with your belief systems, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
And it was very negative. The
Mm.
initial iteration was very negative and
Mm. Interesting.
it really put people in boxes. And again, as a behavioralist and a profiler, I'm trained in many profiling tools. So I was always about letting people out of the box, not putting them back in the box. But then I got home and I'd asked the universe had been very clear. And I was like, okay, I will do this human design experiment thing. I will put down my preconceived ideas and I will run this experiment because ultimately that's what human design is. It's your energetic blueprint and it just invites you into a experiment. And that experiment is to alignment. Either you get closer to alignment, and in my case, purpose was the big part that I really wanted fulfilling, or you don't. And if it doesn't work, you throw it out. So I committed to my experiment. And one of the fundamental things is moving out of the mind, making decisions with the mind and into the body. Each one of us has our own unique way. For you, it's your gut. It's that sacral
Mm.
in the moment. Yes, I have energy for this. No, I don't have energy for this. It's that
Mm-hmm.
simplistic piece where often sacral beings like yourself, they make a decision in the moment and then they let their mind override. They let their mind talk them out of it, or that doesn't sound like a good idea, or I should do this instead, or someone said I should do it that way. But really, your gut, your sacral response will tell you exactly what's correct for you in any given moment.
Right, right.
So, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I remember hearing this
Yeah.
before about my, um, my particular design, and definitely resonates.
Yeah. And especially for you, because you've got a lot of open space in your design. So we have these areas of our design that we call undefined, where we take in, amplify, and reflect back other people's energy. And you
Yeah,
have a lot of that.
I
So there's a
remember you
lot of other
saying
people's
that when we
energy.
spoke on your show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started running my experiment. I integrated into my corporate business. And at the time, I was performance coaching, C-level executives, senior leadership teams, all that sort of thing. And it was a little bit nerve-wracking asking for people's birth time and birthday and that sort of thing because I didn't want to be perceived as woo-woo.
Yeah, right.
And the funny thing was, of course, I built up so much trust with my clients. They were like, yeah, sure. And as soon as I'd had one session with them, using their design and helping them with their design, they of course wanted to know their wives and their kids and how that all worked
Mhm.
together. So I saw very quickly how this cognitive dissonance of who we think we are, and even all these profiling tools, it's still a version of that. It's still who we think we are because we're answering questions. Whereas with human design, I could see that cognitive dissonance was a lot smaller because this was our energetic blueprint.
Mm.
So whether we liked it or not, we would go, yeah, that resonates with me. Yes, I'm maybe expressing it through the shadow, but it was really helping people um, have that full permission slip. And that's the thing that I know for me. I started to really operate from my true authenticity. And my authenticity doesn't look like anybody else's. I mean, obviously, no one's does. Um, but giving myself full permission to be in the world as I'm designed to be. And that has helped me today. And I've had so many experiences where just following my strategy and authority has led me in a direction that I would have never gone, through the mind, and just
Right.
big things have opened up at the other side of it.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been a great journey.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, and I noticed on your podcast description, you kind of described it as a synthesis of modern astrology, the I Ching, the chakra system, the Kabbalah tree of life, quantum physics, and I thought that, wow, talk about throwing a lot of powerful
Yeah.
modalities into a pot.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the challenges with human design. You know, one of the frames that we look at it through is human design made simple, because it is really complicated and it is the synthesis of these ancient wisdom. And many of us don't actually need to know all the complicated details. I mean, someone like me, yep, I want to know, but that's because it's a large part of my
Sure.
work.
Right.
We don't all need to know that. But yeah, it's pretty intense, and it definitely brings together so much wisdom lineage, if you like.
Yeah. Right. Right. And would you share with the audience? I've heard a little bit about the origins of human design, and which is pretty interesting in and of itself, and especially considering, you know, the origins and then where that led to and how popular and
Yeah.
widespread human design has become. And I feel like it's only growing. Obviously, people like yourself with a successful podcast around it. And like, it's just like
Mm,
more and more people are being exposed and tapping in and getting value, extracting value and
yeah.
seeing value in it. So, yeah, would you share a little bit about the
Yeah.
origins?
Sure. So one of the things is that it's very, what we would call new, very
Mm-hmm.
young.
Mm-hmm.
It was channeled in by a guy called Ra Uruhu. I think his name was Alan something, and an ex-advertising executive who, I think his entire life was falling apart. So he ran away basically and went to go and find himself. Part of that process was spending time on one of the Balearic Islands, Ibiza. And while he was there, he heard, as he calls it, this voice, the voice. And for 8 days and 8 nights, he channeled all of this information and then just wrote it down and put it together. Now, one of the things that's so fascinating to me, especially, saying about this scientific background, is that a lot of channeled work that we know of, like the Course in Miracles, it's almost like a person lecturing on universal principles.
Sure.
Whereas with human design, it's mathematically putting together astrology, the I Ching, the chakra system, all of these pieces, and then making it mathematically repeatable. So for me, I was like, yeah, you can't make this stuff up. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty intense, especially for someone who's not even a mathematician for
Yeah.
that matter. And ultimately, he was very new to his spiritual journey as well. So
Right.
obviously, this really pivoted for him. Um, so he brought the information in, and then he sort of, from that place, created human design as we know it today. Now, some of the challenges were that his design, he was a manifester, and manifestors are on the planet here to initiate and inspire us into action.
Mm.
And he brings in this new modality, especially in a time where all the modalities, they just keep multiplying. There's all these different things that are coming in, all these different ways. And one of his gifts, whether you see it that way or not, it's still a gift because it worked, is that his primary energy, the most prominent energy in his chart, was this gate called the gate of shock. So everything that he birthed with human design, it had this air of shock about it. He would
Mm.
tell shocking stories, or he would say that a certain part of the chart or a certain profile line or a certain gate, it was this, almost like this scary story of what could go wrong. And because of that, I think a lot of people initially, like myself, they put it back down because the language was so negative.
Wow.
However, it's my belief that, everything happens exactly the way it's meant to happen. And it's my belief that he had to be that shocking. Like he had to, piss people off, upset people, irritate people, so that enough of us would pay attention. Because I mean, I'm the perfect example. Like I put it down. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah.
But there's this thing about your human design. When you first get your chart, and you might go and get a reading, or you might, like myself, go down your own rabbit hole and discover it, you will be blown away
Yeah.
by the resonance. It's not going to tell you something new. It's not going to tell you all of a sudden, you're meant to be going and doing this in the world and it feels like, really? You are going to be saying, this thing is me.
Yeah.
You see me.
Yeah.
This is my permission slip.
Right.
And that is the thing. Like in this time of chaos, in this time of so much information, I really believe it had to come in this way.
Mm.
Now, we're at this time where it's just exploded. So when I started my experiment 5 years ago, there was hardly anybody.
Yeah.
There was hardly anybody doing it. It was such a small group of people.
Yep.
Um, and now it feels like
Mm-hmm.
everybody is into human design, and everybody's making up their own version of it, or, they're channeling in additions,
Mm-hmm.
all of this sort of stuff.
Mm.
And I think this happens with any modality, especially ones that are very new. But it's also this time to always come back to this place that it's an experiment.
Yeah.
And if you run the experiment and you don't get the results, then just pop it back down.
Yeah.
However, if you commit to the experiment and you commit to living more in alignment and from flow and letting go of resistance and operating from your own inner authority, then it will help you um, find, discover, connect to those things that you already know are in you and want to be birthed.
Yeah. 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 I think that makes very good sense with all, all the stuff in general that's sort of outside of the lines of, maybe what we are raised to believe or learn in, the public school systems. It starts going, yeah, drawing outside the lines, right? I think it's really important once you start dabbling. It's like even all the concepts we talk about on the show. It's like I always say, and you're a smart person. You don't have to take my word for it. Try these perspectives on for yourself and see what kind of results do they get you. To me, at the end of the day, there's so much information about what to do, what not to do. At the end of the day, results speak the loudest, right? And I think that's the interesting thing, and probably why human design and others, have sort of bubbled up. Like we had Richard Rudd, who wrote Gene Keys on the show a while back. What an
Love
incredible
Richard Rudd.
guy, and like story of
Yeah.
how it came through him, and similarly, and it's, I think once you start diving deep, it goes pretty deep. It's like you you see like, okay, this really is reflective of who I am. And then you start, what I think is really interesting, what you talk about doing is how do you use this information to free yourself and become
Yep.
more? And so, yeah, I'm curious, maybe you can speak to that. Like,
Yeah.
and as well as give an overview of what the different, human design types are. And then, okay,
Yep.
great. Now I know this, or my astrological chart, or my gene keys, or whatever. Now,
Mm.
what do I do with it to really empower me further?
Yeah, I love that question because this is actually my biggest, um, I think the most important point. That is that it's all well and good having all of this knowledge, but if you can't live it, then what's the point?
Right.
There's no point.
Right.
Like it's almost it's a bit torturous. Like I have people who go and train with a number of other people, even people who certify to be readers with other people, and they end up coming to me going, I still don't know how to integrate it into my own life, let alone somebody else's.
Right.
So it's a large part of why I'm on the planet, I believe, is to help people actually integrate it. So how do they actually do that? Well, it at first the first point is you want to practice resonance. So as you discover your design in whatever way you do, instead of saying, "Oh, that is me," or "I should be like this," or "It's telling me I'm a projector, so therefore I can't do anything until I have an invitation." No, put all that aside and feel it in your body. Feel it in your body. Does it feel true for you? This is one of my favorite questions. Is
Mm,
this true for me?
mm,
Um, and what you'll start to see is that there's going to be things about yourself that you've probably, especially listening to this podcast, that you've probably been trying to fix about yourself for many years. And I'm here to say, and I'm sure you say this all the time, there's nothing to be fixed. You are not broken.
perfectly
It's
imperfect.
just exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so, what it's all about is starting to give yourself permission. So, straight at the beginning, okay, for me, in the beginning of my journey, when I first started learning, I learned that I'm a manifesting generator. So, that's one of the 5 types. And I will give a little overview for all of them in a minute. But basically, as a manifesting generator, I'm on the planet to break things and remake things. I am here. I can be a little bit superhuman. I can get a lot done. But the thing that really spoke to my heart was that I'm a non linear being.
Mm,
What that means is that MGs go off in all sorts of different directions, doing different things. They find it hard to, like, even in my advertising career, I never applied for a job, but every 2 years I'd go, I think I'm a bit over it. I either need a new job or a new role or something like that. And as serendipity would have it, boom, someone would headhunt me and I would move.
Mm-hmm.
I've also, ran a kitchen for my parents in a restaurant. I've also run a dressage horse breeding property. I've also done so many different things, as well as, the work that I do today. And that's really normal for a manifesting generator. And the other part about it is that they take pieces from different experiences and then all of a sudden they fit together. It's like we break things and then we put them back together. So, just understanding that I was meant to be this nonlinear person, not the quitter that I thought I was, because I kept
Right.
quitting. I quit advertising, or first I quit TV and then I quit advertising and then I quit whatever. And I was so sure that there was something wrong with me because I can't commit to something.
Right.
But human design really helped me to see that, no, this is the way that I'm designed. And as well, especially once I got into the personal development world, of course, it was like, consistency creates results. So every day I'm trying to do the same thing and it's so painful and uncomfortable for me. But again, I'm a line 3. I've got emotional authority and I'm a manifesting generator. So this set me free because I then understood that consistency, and even as a woman, consistency for a man is a 24-hour energetic cycle, whereas consistency for a woman happens over a 28-day energetic cycle. So,
Right.
the consistency is so different for just men and women, let alone the nuances that lie within us. But
Right.
that gave me permission to stop trying to fix myself and force myself to do the same thing day in, day out, which is the opposite of what my superpower is. My superpower is experimentation and adventure and doing things differently, and in human design terms, making and breaking bonds. So I'm all about this. So instantly I'm given permission to be what I now call messy. I love messy because
Hmm.
messy creates miracles for
Right.
me.
Right.
Messy creates, I'm the person who pivots on a dime. I'm the one who is super happy to try something new.
Hmm.
As a line 3, I've spent so much of my life falling down and getting back up again. And, I had this belief system that, why do I have to do it the hard way? Then I learn I'm a line 3 and realize that it's all about experimentation, and what doesn't work is just as important as what doesn't work. And now I have a governing belief that I'm winning or learning, like I literally
Right.
can't lose.
Right.
So it gives me that ability to not only live in alignment with my design, but the human design that I practice and teach is called transformational human design. So then I get to create the belief systems that support my design. So all
Hmm.
of a sudden, this subconscious mind is supporting my design. I'm being led by my authority. I'm being led by my truth, my authenticity. And this supercomputer between my ears is it's puppy dog. So between the two of them, creating miracles.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Mm,
That's really, really powerful to realize. First off, what you said about the difference between men and women.
mm.
What a fascinating insight. 24
Yeah.
hour sort of cycle versus 28 days.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think,
That's epic, right? Like
yeah.
that's epic,
Well,
epic. Because
knowing is
everything,
so important, right? It gives you the right context to understand what the heck's going on, and the difference, and getting down to the granular level of who you are personally. We're so caught up in, we get sold on what the narrative is of what the ideal flow looks like for a person's life to equate to
yeah,
success. And meanwhile, you know, it's so varied based off of your unique makeup and trajectory, right?
yeah, yeah. And the ability to trust that, like so many of us feel like we're different, we don't fit in, we're doing it differently. So we try to do, I often talk about, I realized pretty early on there was this piece where we as humans, we go external first. So there's something in my life that I want to change. Who's the expert out there that's got what I want? I'll go and learn from them. But what I believe and what human design helps us do is say, okay, there's something in my life I want to change. I'm going to go inside first. I'm going to trust my authority, and my own authority and my own power that sits within me, and internal guidance is going to align me to what I need. And then that is going to guide me through my strategy to the right person to help
Mm,
me.
right.
So it flips it all on its head, because that's why we keep getting stuck. We keep running other people's strategies and wondering why they don't work for us and assuming that we're broken.
Yeah.
We're not broken. We're
R-
just running the wrong freaking strategies.
Right. Can you give a high level overview of
Yeah.
each type, each human design type?
Yeah. So there's 5 types, and the types are um, they're actually a part of. They weren't a part of the initial download. So this is something that I suppose is quite controversial because a lot of people are so married to type, and type gives us our strategy, which is super important.
Mm-hmm.
But everything after that, we got to be almost a little bit wary of
Mm.
because it's something that was created by humans. So it wasn't the voice, it wasn't this
Mm.
higher consciousness being.
Mm.
It works in a lot of cases, but it also doesn't work in a lot of
Hold on,
cases.
just so I'm
Okay.
clear. So the different types, like generator, manifesting generator, that wasn't part of the original download.
Nope.
Interesting. You know
Ra
what?
created it.
Y Interesting, because what's interesting about that for me is if I look at every single modality, sort of, like I look at my gene keys, like the life's purpose is, his title for it. What gene key is it? 30. I'm forgetting which one it is now, but it's the World Wide Web of words. Using words, and definitely resonate with that. Or I'm a Leo in astrology, or a King of Hearts in my destiny card, or 11 in my numerology. The only one that when I first heard it, I was kind of like, oh, how am I? I feel like I would be a manifesting generator. I'm like very much like creating things all the time, and I'm a generator. And that was the first time I heard what my thing was. I was like, oh, I want to be something else. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious. It's curious to hear that wasn't. That's news to me. I did not realize it was
Yeah.
not an original part of the download.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't share that. And the thing is that Ra and his people, they created type so that they could teach it. It would make it
Mm,
easier to teach.
gotcha.
But really, it's our definition. It's how we're the areas of our chart that are consistent, reliable, always there, and the areas of our chart that are open for influence, if you like.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that you would say, oh, I thought I'd be a manifesting
Right.
generator, because you also have a chart that, yes, you're a generator, but a lot of the things that the memes about generators would disregard the fact that you actually have this superpower, like a projector, let's say, or a reflector, of reading energy. Because you've got so much openness in your chart,
Mm,
you and at times you could feel very like you're in a washing machine, like you're being tossed back and forward with other people's opinions or other people's fears or other people's emotions. and
mm,
and like, if you don't know better, you think that's yours, so you're like
mm.
constantly having all of these really big emotions that actually even aren't even yours.
Wow.
um so yeah, so type, we just have to be conscious of that. It can really change depending on what's colored in your chart and what's white.
Interesting.
But what won't change? So I'll give you a quick overview. The manifester, what makes a manifester is a motor to the throat. Now, you don't really need to understand that, but this is where the definition piece comes in. It means that this person has energy directly to the throat. The throat is all about manifestation. So a manifester is on the planet to inspire people into action.
Mm,
They're effectively plugged into source. They have to follow their creativity. They will tend to be people, when they're in alignment, that you're either like, if you have manifestors in your life, you either love them or you're not, they're not your people. Like, they can be quite polarizing.
mm,
um, However, many of them turn into people pleasers because they notice this really early on. When a manifestor walks into the room, they've walked into a room, everyone has an opinion, so they become people pleasers and they shut themselves down
mm,
because they notice. But actually, they have to be authentically themselves. They have to walk their own path because they have people that they are specifically here to inspire into action.
mm.
I know for me, I'm surrounded by manifestors, and
Interesting.
if they say something, I'm like, I'm on it. Like, if my body responds that it's a hell yes, I'm like, I'm all over it. I don't care what my head says, I'm all over it.
Mm,
And it's been very powerful.
interesting.
Um, then we have the generator, and the generator is they're actually, so 70% of the global population are
Mm,
generators, and what they're here to do is whatever lights them up. And the reason that they're here to do whatever lights them up is because they are consistently holding the life force energy of the planet. They're the ones that have the energy to do the work, to build the things. Once they're inspired into action, they can create and create and build and build. So in the past, that's been used against the generator
Mm.
because they have that ability to work and do things. They've, been put into the corporate environment, put into factories, put into schools and told that they have to teach that way, where really they have to be guided by what lights them up.
Mm.
And when they're guided by this enthusiasm or this excitement or what lights them up, then their capacity to create and build and generate the life force energy for the planet just amplifies.
Mm.
Um, then we have the manifesting generator. So it's actually a hybrid between the manifestor and the manifesting generator. Um, and they are here they do tend to be a little bit like, I think one of the other leading teachers, she calls them time benders. Like
Mm.
we can look like we are time benders. We
Mm.
can get a lot done. We can get from A to B or A to Z or A to Z
Mhm, mhm.
really quickly. But we're very much an energy that takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Mm.
So it's being okay with that, like we'll get there and we'll get there faster than most, but it's going to be it's going to be
Right.
up and down as we go. Um, Also here to create, to build, to put the work that they love to do out into the world.
Mhm.
Then we have projectors, and projectors are here as guides. They have an ability to see the resourceful and unresourceful use of energy.
Mm.
They have this ability to say, if we were sitting with a projector in the room and let's say someone had put an offer on the table or an idea on the table, and both you and I are like, oh, I should do that. The projector's like, yeah, no, nope, you shouldn't do that. That is a misuse of your energy.
Mm.
They also will tend to be people um, that are very good at the nuances of things. They can create structure and models of things. I don't know for sure, but I reckon. Do you know Billy Carlson? You've
Mm.
probably even had him on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I reckon he's a projector. You know that how he's so passionate. He goes so far down
Mhm.
the rabbit hole. He has all the knowledge, all the information,
Yep.
and people then invite him for his wisdom. So
Mhm.
a projector needs to be invited in to share their wisdom, and once they're invited in, then they guide people to much greater outcomes. And then we have reflectors, and reflectors are only 1% of the global population. There's a lot of what I would call unresourceful information for reflectors out there, um, because they're not wishy-washy. They're not just freaking unicorns. They're not like
Hmm.
delicate. In my experience working with reflectors, they are some of the most incredible human beings when it comes to subtle energy.
Mm.
They can see things in subtle energy that no one else can see. It
Wow.
blows my mind.
Wow.
They also, because they are completely wide open, they actually have, they're reflecting back any environment. So if you have a reflector in your life and something irritates you about that person, you're looking at you. So it's like projection is perception amplified. So they're really showing us they're a mirror to the rest of the world where we are at. And when they surrender to their journey, as I said, they're incredibly powerful beings. So
Wow.
that is just a tiny little overview of
Yeah,
all
I think of
five.
the one reflector I know definitively, that she's a reflector, and very much like that description, and just like unicorn, unique, super open energy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
they're amazing. And they have that ability to, like they don't get as affected by other people's energy because they live in this constant state of energetic movement.
Mm.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Right, right, right. Interesting, interesting. Yeah. So, what is different about transformational human design? Your sort of
Yeah.
methodology that you've come to.
Yeah, I love this question because when I picked up human design, having all these years of, 15 years of understanding human behavior,
Mhm.
why we do what we do, and then coming along to human design, and they basically just say, well, you just need to follow your strategy and authority. And for me, there was a massive gap. I was like, hang on a second. Um, I can do that, but what about this supercomputer between my ears that I know that I have to consciously shift and change?
Yeah.
Like I know I have to do that. So transformational human design is the putting together of human design, the gene keys, because the gene
Mm.
keys, what the gene keys does that human design doesn't do, human design can be very um, almost two-dimensional. It'll give you your energies and just say, well, here you go, these are your governing energies. Whereas what the gene keys brings to everything is the shadow, the gift, and the city.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, what that says is it gives us the journey. It gives us
Mm-hmm.
this point of going, okay, well, I might be expressing it through the shadow, but look at all this potential I have. Like all I need to focus is on this potential. And then transformational human design is where I bring in transformational coaching, NLP, and using our intuition so that we can rewire the brain, so that we can actually change the belief systems to support the design.
Mm.
So as I said earlier, like my designs also help me to pick up governing beliefs that support me, knowing that I'm creating my reality from what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So transformational human design is exactly that. It's that ability to not only use our strategy and authority to align to our design, but to then consciously rewire our belief systems, our behavior, and everything else so that it's almost like um, then the subconscious mind is in full support of your unique
Mm.
design, that what you're here to do in the world. And it really helps people move through. Like what I love as a behavioralist is that we can look at our gene key or our gate, and we can look at our shadow, and we can look at the belief that sits in there, or the fear that sits in there, and go straight to it. Whereas, I'm a really good behavioral coach. I'm really good at discovering the beliefs that my clients are getting in the way of their greatness.
Right.
But not everyone has me all the time to go diving in. So a lot of teachers will teach these like beliefs like I don't deserve to be wealthy or I don't deserve to have money. But we're so much more nuanced than that. So if we don't get to that decision that was made that became a belief, sometimes we don't change it. And in my experience, like sometimes it's taken me a long time to change really tiny beliefs, but it's because I didn't have that nuanced piece.
Yeah.
Whereas with human design, it takes us right in.
Yeah.
Like it takes us right into the things that are probably going to be very relevant. So it's much easier to find the things that are potentially standing in our way. And we can then see the potential. We can see the potential of what's, maybe lying dormant, maybe waking up, maybe in motion right now to manifestation, or maybe being manifest, but we can see our potential, and then we can focus on that instead of our shadow.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. That's very thorough. And I love how you're just pulling in different elements to make the sum really greater than the equal parts, right?
Oh, I love that you just said that, because
Huh.
that's the biggest thing I'm always saying. Because people break human design apart, like they'll break apart your profile, or they'll break apart your definition, or they'll break apart your whatever it is, and they always forget to put it back together,
Yeah.
because it means nothing until you put it back together and you see the story or the patterns or whatever it is that lies within you,
Yeah.
because it's going to be nuanced and different for everybody.
Right.
But yeah, and that's a typical manifesting generator. I was like, and a line 3, I was like, yeah, this stuff needs something else, a bit more of this, like the ultimate tinkerer,
Yeah.
a bit of this, less of that,
Yeah.
put it all back together.
Can you speak to the whole line piece of it? Because if I recall, I'm
Yeah.
a 4-6 generator, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And can you explain how,
Yeah.
how what do the numbers represent? And then, of course, in my case, curious to hear what you would say that
Yeah,
means.
love it. Yeah, so the line numbers are super important. Okay, so the gates and the line numbers, they go back to the I Ching. The I Ching is the Chinese book of changes. It's a
Mm.
divination tool, but it's also, they've now mapped it back to our DNA. So
Mm-hmm.
the
What a
DNA
trip.
codons and the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, they've all been mapped back to each other, which I think is fascinating in
Yeah.
itself. Now, within the hexagrams, there lies these 6 line numbers. And if you imagine that the first 3, they're what we call personal line numbers. So this is an energy that's focused inward on the self. Then the 4, 5, and 6, the top, what we call the top trigram, they're focused on the other. So that's transpersonal. This is a journey. It represents a journey. So if the one starts with taking in knowledge to answer questions and fill the gaps, the second line is all about natural talent, natural gifts, what lies
Mm-hmm.
within. The third is all about experiential learning. Um, falling down, getting back up. Then the fourth line is all about taking all of this from the 1, 2, and 3 and taking it to the
Mm,
people, sharing it with those
mm,
around them. It's very
mm,
community minded, and it wants to lead from within the group. Then we have the line 5, which is all about impact, problem solving, leadership. It wants to go out and lead the world and have an impact with everything that has been spread by the 4. And then the 6 is all about the cycle almost starting again. It's the visionary that can see a new
mm,
world. It's a visionary that's setting up something new for the line 1 to
mm.
start again, if that
Interesting.
makes sense. So all of us have our profile lines, which are going to be something like, for you, it's a 4-6. For me, it's a 3-5. And these are almost, I love to think of it like it's your toolkit. It's the fundamental theme that plays out of how you do your
Mm,
purpose, how you are in relationships, how you navigate through life. So for you, you navigate through life fundamentally, first and foremost, through the relationships that you
mhm,
have. Because the 4 is all about
mm,
relationships. It's like um, a line 4 doesn't have to go out and market itself to the world. It just needs to tell its friends. And then its friends will tell
mm.
everybody
Interesting.
else that, you know. Um, and for you specifically, the line 4, all your opportunities come through that community,
Interesting.
those people. Richard Rudd, I think, is a 4-6
Mm.
as well. So a lot of his stories you hear, like, it comes through connections and friends. And I was actually just interviewing the other day Lee Harris,
Ah,
and he's a 1
lovely.
4. Oh my God, I love Lee. Like, he blew my mind. The chat before I even hit record blew my mind.
He's one
Like,
of the purest souls I know. Like he's just like there's no pretense, no ego, no just like he's just so clear and powerful and kind. Yeah.
exactly. And it blew me away. Like, we were just having a chat about life, and I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
God, I feel like I've known
Yeah,
you
yeah.
forever. Anyway,
He's annoyingly likable.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, the stories that he tells, like, even when um, it was a friend of his that says, you should actually do this intuition thing for a job. Like, that's a very
Mm,
line 4 thing to happen, to come through your
mhm,
friends.
mhm,
And then your line 6. So you're actually at the line 6 is what we call a triphasic line. It's the only one that does it. And you have these 3 significant cycles. 0 to 30, you operate like a line 3. And what that means is that up until the age of 30, you probably feel like you fall down and get up a lot. There's a lot of winning or learning. There's a lot of, why is it
mhm,
easier for everybody else? Why am I constantly having to do this a few times before I get it? And it can feel really, really uncomfortable. But then at 30, there's this shift. And this
mm,
shift goes into, you almost become not reclusive, but it's like you take a step back and you become more contemplative, and you kind of
mhm,
review the first 30 years. And
mhm,
then it's almost like you're in this time where not only are you healing from the first 30 years, but you're just creating, slowly but surely creating wisdom from all of these lessons, and then maybe running that experiment further from the things that you've learned, and creating deeper wisdom around those things. And then after 50, we call our role models, because the line 6 is the role model, we call them out. So what you'll find is that obviously you're already putting a lot of your work out in the world, but you are going to find that it amplifies, and it's
mm.
probably already starting. My husband is a line 6, and he's 48, and he's like the
Same.
freaking
Same.
Pied
I'm
Piper.
48 as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I remember
it's
we talked about this briefly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's crazy. So, and he went from being like, oh, all I need is like a desert island and you. And for me, being my
Mm.
design, I'm like, oh
Hmm.
my God, I could never do that. And he's like, that would just be perfect. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But now he's all about the people, like, all he wants to do, like, and it's not that he has to do anything. He's constantly being asked for his wisdom.
Yeah.
So that's what you're here to do. And in that place, it's like you're even dreaming a new world and a new possibility.
Mm.
So these line numbers really help us to understand how we operate in the world. So for me,
Yeah.
it's experimentation and impact, because these are two of the big themes of my two line numbers.
It's really interesting how much that resonates because I'm starting down literally today I've had conversations with friends who are musicians who were I'm stewarding this conscious art community that's all about creating a a new a new world, built around music and art, and allowing, fans and and artists to come together and create permanent village infrastructure around that. And so it's so community driven, and it's also coming from like peer group. It's like sort of I'm taking some of the things that
Yeah.
they're doing, and okay, let's give it this structure, and let's here's the vision of what we can do with it when it's combined in a certain way and create a path to a new type of community and earth. So
Yeah.
it's probably my longest, wildest spiritual breadcrumb story going back 15 plus years that I've shared a little
Mm.
bit on this podcast, but it's really coming back into the headlights now for me. It's like you just, even in the last week, the amount of
Yeah.
energy going in this direction, it's a
I
trip.
love that. One of the greatest things that a line six can do is be patient with themselves, because often the line six, and you can have your line six in different areas of your chart, but in your profile, it's the most significant place. So these are going to be the most resonant, you're going to be most
Hmm.
aware of. And the
Hmm.
line six just needs to be patient, because you are here to be great, but the greatness takes time. It has to be built over a lifetime and
Yeah.
then called from you. So
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like you're right where you need to be.
Wow. Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating. So, yeah. So I'm curious for people listening who want to learn, more about their human design, and then of course how to then take that and do something meaningful with it. What
Mm.
what would you recommend for them?
Well, look, the easiest thing is you can just go to my website,
Hmm.
emmadunwoody.com. You can get your chart for free
Hmm.
and then listen to the podcast.
Mm.
I have an episode that says start here, or if you're a manifesting generator, or in fact, any type, and listening to your authority, just go to whatever episode you're curious about.
Hmm.
Um, and you can do it that way. But if you really want to invest in yourself and invest in the greatness that lies within you, then you can always join up with us. HDX is my community. It's
Mm.
kind of, again, it's the MG version, because it's a course crossed with a membership, crossed with all sorts of things. But it's this community of people not only learning human design, we have a bunch of other modalities in there, but the people who are there that want to actually change the world. They actually
Mm.
want to access the greatness that lies within them, align to their purpose, and support each other as we, take us to this new paradigm and this new reality that we're all creating.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll make sure and put a link in the show notes to your site and everything. I'm sure some people will be checking that out and reaching out. And um, I'd like to switch gears just a little bit. Can't believe we're already almost to an hour. If you would, one of my go to questions. I love to hear stories of synchronicity or serendipity or positive paranormal stories. Actually, the project I was just referencing is probably my wildest one, that's kind of unfolded over 15 or so years, like I mentioned. So any sort of inspired story like that, I love to hear, and the listeners have come to expect
Mm.
that I ask it of you. So yeah, I just
I
wondering if
love
you have
this
something fun to share.
question. I have like 50 million. Even the way I met
Great.
my husband,
Great.
like, I'm going to tell you the quick husband version, and then I'm
Okay.
going to tell you my human design when I was like, all right, I'm really doing my experiment.
Cool.
Um, when I met my husband, so, and funnily enough, I was in Ibiza, and this was all, human design was birthed in Ibiza. I'm like,
All right.
what
Right.
the?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I was in
Of all the
Ibiza.
places.
I know, right? And in my astrocartography, I think it's my Jupiter line, but one of those lines goes straight through the Balearic
Mm,
Islands. So
mm,
it's like, this is not an accident. Anyway,
yeah. Right. Wow.
um, I'm with in Ibiza with friends. I didn't even know what it was before we went there. We spent an entire season. We went for a week. We stayed the entire season and worked there. My godmother lived in London,
Hmm.
and I was staying with her because I was doing the Australian thing, backpacking around Europe. But I'd promised my um, godmother that I would help her friend who needed someone to be the receptionist at his publishing house because they didn't have someone, blah, blah, blah. And it's like the worst. I'm the worst receptionist ever. But I was like, yep, I'll do it. I'll probably need money by then. I'll do it. So we get back from Ibiza on the Thursday. And by the Friday, we decide, nah, screw this. We're going straight back. And I'm trying to call this guy. And the guy that owned the publishing house, his name was Johnny Walker.
Huh.
And
I
I'm like,
I live
him.
with a Johnny Walker.
I love
That's
it.
funny.
And I'm calling him and I can't get through. And I'm like, well, I can't not turn up. I'm just, I'm that sort of, I might be a backpacker, but I can't not turn up. I can't do that. That's not who I am. So I turn up at this job and he's showing me the ropes, like, you're going to sit here and you're going to do this. And I'm thinking, like, God, how do I tell him? Like,
so you tried to call to get out of it. You couldn't. So you show up just to kind of do the right thing. And then he's thrusting you into the job.
Yeah. And I'm like,
that's funny.
Shit, how do I tell him? Anyway, I'm walking down the stairs and he's talking to me and I'm like distracted by how am I going to tell him. And I remember just looking up and looking across the office and there's this guy standing there that, like, in my world, the hottest guy you've ever seen in your entire life, leaning on the kitchen, like, bench thing. He's got a cigarette in his hand because I could still smoke
the Marlboro Man. Okay.
Yeah. And he's standing there smoking and I looked across and I just hear this voice in my head that says, that's the man I'm going to marry.
Wow.
And then instantly I hear my ego go, as if you've got any chance with him. Like, no chance. And then, sort of long story short, like, we obviously kicked it off. We, got along really well. We had a good chuckle. I was always very, especially English people, they call Australians very feisty. They're like, God, they would say to me, you're so feisty. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm just Australian.
I could go with that. Yeah.
I definitely have a feisty streak. But anyway, and so we just start chatting. We kick it off. Then we're all on the tube. So it's me and like 9 other guys because I was only one of 2 women that worked in this office. And in hindsight,
you stayed at the job because of the hot guy.
I stayed at the job because of the hot guy. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, good.
And we're all sitting on the tube going home. And Justin, my husband, he says to everyone, he goes, oh, does anyone want to go for a drink? Because he had to drive back to Oxford and he didn't want to drive in the traffic. And he's like, does anyone want to catch up? And went around each one of these people, each one of the guys, they couldn't do it. They couldn't go for a drink. And then he said, oh, do you want to go? And I'm like, sure. And I'm thinking nothing. So I'm like, at this stage, I'm like, I've got no chance. So I'm absolutely friend zoned myself. I'm like, cool, let's just go. Yeah. Well, as history would have it, he had planned that everyone would say no because he was too afraid to ask me out directly. And we go out, we have a drink.
That's amazing.
That's it. Like, within 2 weeks, and I'd left a relationship back in Australia. I just like run screaming. Like, he wanted to move in with me. He wanted to all the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm out. This is not my jam. And then 2 weeks later, Justin was moving in with me and 4 other Aussies. And the rest is history. We'll be married 23 years at the end of this year.
So. What
but it was
an
just
awesome
that
story.
Serendipity, just trusting so much. But
isn't that cool? Your ethics, like your moral fiber of like, okay, I can't reach this guy. I'm going to at least come in and talk to him. Like, and that led to everything.
Yeah. A whole lifetime. Yeah. So, my other serendipity story that I want to share with you is it's more like a proof of the experiment story. Really early on, when I had started using human design in my business, I had already started a podcast. And the podcast, I can't even remember what it was called, like Anything Can Change or You Can Change or something really average and boring, very beige. And I'm running my human design experiment and I get a lot of downloads in the shower. This is a place where just so much drops in. And all of a sudden I just hear in my head, you have to change the name of your podcast to the Human Design Podcast. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm running my experiment. I've had a thought, so I can't act on it. I've got to write it down. So I write it down. And every part of my ego is screaming at me. No, you can't. Who are you to think you could do that? You can't do that. You don't know enough, blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, no, I'm committed to the experiment. I've had a thought. I've had an insight. I'm writing it down. And now, as a manifesting generator, I have to wait for something external of me to respond to. And then if in that response, it's a green light from my authority, then I do it.
Interesting.
So I'm following my strategy and authority. Next day, I'm on the phone to a mentor that, he did a lot of our training in my master coach program. So, yes, he's spiritual, but I was a bit like, I'm not sure if I'm going to share this human design thing with him because it might be a bit too woo woo.
Yeah.
But I do. In the end, I share it with him. And after this download the night before, I booked to have a call with him. And I get on the call with this mentor, Joe. And he says, hey, before we talk about anything, I've been going down this rabbit hole of human design. And you know what I think? I think that someone needs to do a human design podcast because there are no good podcasts out there. And I was like,
Wow.
shut up,
Wow. Well, that's
shut
amazing.
up. So that was like, okay, I get the green light. And although,
Yeah.
and I would say, I would have done maybe 10, 15, 20, God, maybe even 50 episodes before my ego really quietened down. But I was constantly like, I'm just following my strategy and authority. If it's meant to be, the results will come. And my podcast has a life of its own, like it
Yeah.
took off. And it's
Wow.
because I just followed my strategy and authority. I followed my
Right.
instinct,
Right.
my intuition. So yeah, but I
Wow.
have thousands of those stories.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, yeah, both of those are super inspiring, actually. It's like all life's purpose and life path just
Yeah.
landing, it's like one of those things when we can get out of our own way long enough and just listen enough. You don't, we're led,
Yeah.
right? And that's really what I get from both of those stories. And such an inspiration. Wow. Well,
Mm.
this has been awesome, Emma. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share. And what is the best way for people? I mean, you've already said, your website is your name, emmadunwoody.com. And of course, the podcast. I'm assuming they can tune into the Human Design podcast anywhere
Yep.
that
Anywhere you can
podcast
find
can be found.
podcasts. Yep. Yep.
Cool. Great. Great. And yeah, I guess with that being said, then the only thing that I have left for you is my cliche closing question. And it is this: in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Emma Dunwoody?
Oh, what is the meaning of life? For me, it's living your greatness. The meaning of
Mm,
life is actually living your greatness, whatever
mm.
that may be.
I love that answer. It's like from this moment forward, the optimal thing is to step into the greatest and greatest version of ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you know, um, and that is extremely great if you're willing to meet it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh God, I
well,
hear you on that. Like, yeah. Yeah.
mhm,
You have to be willing to go there. I know that's a lot of
yeah,
my journey is that, I've just learnt to do it anyway.
yeah,
Just do it. So
yeah. Yeah, if it scares you and it excites you, it's probably for you.
exactly. I
I like to
love
say.
that.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Well, Emma, thank you for sharing today. This has been such a pleasure and honor. And yeah, all of you out there for tuning your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts into another episode. Until next time, journey well.
Thank you.